Hi everyone, in today's video we're going to have a look at ergonomics and anthropometrics. So what you need to know first of all is what those two terms mean, what ergonomics means and what anthropometrics means, how both of those can affect designs of every single everyday product, and then the most important thing really is you're going to have to be able to give real life examples of how that's applied in industry. Typically this is going to end up being in mainly your paper 2, your 1.5 hour long exam paper. So what will probably happen is it will give you um, examples of products and ask you how they can be designed to be more ergonomic or what sort of data has been used in the design of it. They do like to use the anthropometrics as part of the maths question, so it might give you a table of data that you then need to interpret in some way as well. So ergonomics and anthropometrics, they are two different things. However, they are very, very closely linked together. They always go hand in hand, basically. So we don't hear about one without the other. Um, But without anthropometrics, you cannot design something to be as ergonomic as possible. So it's all about how does something get designed for how someone is going to interact with it. So that could be a product, that could be a space, that could be an interface, it could be furniture. But ergonomics and anthropometrics, the whole point of both of those together is to make that experience of interacting with something as good as possible. So anthropometrics, so simply put, this is the data, the information that designers use to help create their product. So this will be to do with particular measurements that you might find of the human body. Um, so what you have to be careful here is you can't just say things like arm length or leg length or hand length because they're all broken down to the mechanics of the human body a lot more. Um, so what you would have say, for example, is so we've got the example here of like stereos, the same for like phones and that type of thing. It will be hand size to make sure things are fit as comfortable as possible. But with the hand size, you wouldn't just say hand size. It might be like palm width. You'd also have to look at like finger length to make sure that you can reach the buttons correctly. There might be that you have to like grip strength. So you might make sure that people can actually physically hold it and grip it hard enough. The anthropometrics is essentially those measurements that are then used to then aid in the design of a certain product. So one of the most useful books. So if you've watching this before doing the coursework, I'm sure you're going to end up using this. But there is a copy of this in my classroom, and you can find extracts online as well. Um, is it essentially has the measurements of the human body in all sorts of different positions. Now, obviously, there are certain different like subgroups and factors to take into consideration. Think like age, because obviously, when you are young and you're growing, your sizes change quite dramatically until you get to about 25 when you stop growing. And then once you get past a certain age, around I think maybe like 60, 65, then you start shrinking again. Gender makes a big difference as well. Race, where people come from. So if you think about the average height of people compared to like Sweden, compared to China, compared to like all over Asia and Central Europe, people are all different shapes and sizes depending on where they are from. And you've also got things like disability and ability and those types of things as well. There are other subgroups and other things to take into consideration, but these are sort of the main ones that might uh, affect something. Um, so anthropometric data is basically you'll have in this book here and online you'll find all sorts of diagrams and that type of thing. For any like sort of sub measurement of the human body that you're going to use, there'll be a whole set of data and measurements to do with it, as well as just having it in a table with all the numbers. You'll also have it in graphs like this. So this is where you have basically at the bottom you have 0 and at the top you have 100, obviously. Um, when you are designing for the average human being, you are designing in this red part here. So from the 5th to the 95th percentile. That term is very important. Please do make sure you understand and note that because that will come up. So because most people that I've taught in college fall within the 5th to 95th. If we take like height, for example, the 95th to 100 will be the very, very tall. So if you are, I think it's over 6'4", I think, you would be over the 95th percentile. And if you are 5% and below, you are under. You're one of the shorter scale of things. But generally speaking, if you are a completely fit, able, healthy person, you typically will fall under the 5th to the 95th percentile. So please do just make sure that you are aware of that term. And obviously, the smack bang in the middle average would be the 50th. Like that is the most common height, weight, whatever the measurement may be. So we talked a little bit about the that book, The Measure of Man and Woman. You will find loads of diagrams and statistics online as well. But I just want to go just to reiterate, you can't just say like arm length or leg length or something like that. It's got to be broken down quite a lot more. So you'll have things like finger length, grip strength, hand width, arm thickness, leg length. So it's breaking down all these different measurements. So if you see this diagram down here at the bottom, this is taken from that book, The Measure of Man and Woman, and it will have them in all sorts of different positions and show you each breakdown. Because if obviously all products don't require the same human measurements to be able to be designed correctly. So if you're designing a chair, obviously you're going to need, so if you take the one on the right hand side, you're going to need the measurements for when they're sitting in that position. So you're going to need things like their lower leg measurements, their upper leg measurements, their glute measurements, their lower back. So there's a lot more measurements. Whereas if something's going to be in a stood up position with their arms out, you're going to need a different set of measurements as well. So it's understanding that there's different measurements depending on what the thing you are designing is. So just to show you, I talked about race a little bit and different cultures. So on average, basically, different countries will require different sets of measurements. So the measure of man and woman is based off the UK measurements. You will have, so as of this article, which was 2014, the tallest males were from the Netherlands in Holland. And then the shortest, oh, I can't remember now. I shouldn't have. I think it was, well, clearly it was an Asian country of some kind, but I can't remember off the top of my head. But obviously, measuring or designing something for someone from Holland will be different than designing something for someone in the UK or America. It could also to do with weight. So obviously, it's why, and this is not meant in an offensive way in any way. So it's like in America, the average sizes you get a lot more like 5XL and those sort of things for sizes of like trousers and that type of thing because the weight generally is higher than it would be in places like the UK. So you get those different sizes depending on uh, different countries and different cultures. So that's anthropometrics, like a sort of whistle top tour of it. So next we've got ergonomics. So this is ergonomics is now about how do you interact with that product, that furniture, that space, or whatever it may be. So it does use anthropometrics to design that specific thing, but it then takes a few other factors into consideration as well. So just to show you some examples of the kinds of products that how they've evolved as ergonomics have come into play. So the what most common one you're probably going to realize is things like games controllers and mobile phones. So if you ever had like the original Xbox, like the controller was an absolute beast, quite uncomfortable to hold, quite difficult to hold properly. I don't even know what Xbox run now. I stopped buying it at 360. But you'll notice that they've got a lot more streamlined, a lot more comfortable to hold. Same with things like mobile phones. They started out as absolute beasts. They got a lot smaller. Then obviously when touchscreen technology came in, they got a bit bigger again. Computer mouses, kettles, pretty much every single product you interact with has been designed to be as comfortable as physically possible. So there are some products that work better with ergonomics than others, but there's also other things to take into consideration. So we talked about trying to make it as comfortable as possible. That is like the main thing people like assume with ergonomics, but there are other factors to take into consideration. So things like color. So obviously, if you've ever done like art, you might be aware of like things like color theory and how red can be seen as like aggressive or off, and green it can be like go, blue can be quite calming, those sorts of things. Um, Colors are used quite a lot possibly without you even realizing. So if it's like if you have in your car and you have warning lights and they come out as orange because it's for warning. Same with things like in kettles that will light up when you press a button, so you know that it has lit up. It gives you that reaction. There's also to do with the different levels of light that might be a consideration as well. So how bright a light is or what color light there is. if you've ever watched The Apprentice on the BBC, on the first episode, you'll notice that pretty much all of the contestants, like the males are wearing red ties and the females are wearing red dresses because red's meant to be like a power color, shows leadership. So it's like that's like they're going in like I'm in charge, that type of thing. They have played around before in prison cells with different colors to see if it'll like calm inmates down. So they've tried painting things like light blues and that sort of thing to see if that has an effect on their demeanor. You've also got lighting. Um, Probably for the most part, I imagine a lot of you at night you probably sit in bed with your phone, with the lights off, with your phone on, which is terrible for your eyes. If anyone here's got particularly not amazing eyesight, so I wear glasses and I've got a lazy eye, which does mean certain lighting does affect me quite a bit. So I always struggled when I was at college university in exam halls, particularly the kind of exam lighting you would get was very, very bright and it would cause me to have quite a lot of headaches. The same with in restaurants when they dim the lights a lot, again, it causes me to have quite bad migraines. But that is why a lot of thought should go into the idea of having lighting to improve the user experience. So sound also obviously plays quite a vital part. So you can have things, of course, like sat navs, the fact that you can have your phone can talk to you. Now, for you, you probably turn that off. But if you are someone, for example, that needs to have that auditory communication, so just to like help you, so someone's not as good with technology, that might be a way of getting them to use something a lot better. It can also be used as like warnings and things like machinery. So you ever wonder why like big bits of home machinery will beep when people are reversing? That's to let people know as a safety feature that something is backing up. Please be careful. The person can't see. Um, and typically, it's also why when you press things like light switches or buttons, they tend to click because that click is sort of that receipt of oh, that's been pressed. Because typically, if you go to press something and nothing happens, what's your first reaction? Is you press the button again 15, 16, 17 times because nothing happens. So that's why if you press something, it clicks. It goes, okay, I pressed that, I know, and then something will happen. And the other one, which is the main one that everyone always considers about, is comfort. So obviously, if depending what it is, if it's a piece of furniture, obviously you want to sit in it. If it's something you can hold, you want to make sure it's nice and comfortable. Make sure it's gripped to your hand. Make sure it's not too heavy. Make sure there's no sharp edges. So comfort is what everyone assumes is like the main part of ergonomics, but there are those other four factors to bear in mind. So color, lighting, sound, and cover all together make ergonomics. And once obviously you've got that, and then you've got the anthropometric data that is used to then make something as comfortable as possible. All that together is aimed to make a product or a thing as comfortable and easy to use as possible. Because the whole idea being that once you do that, it will get more sales, it will make it a more successful product, and then that breeds more money. So if you take example of a product that can we improve? So this is quite a typical question. It'll give you a product and it'll say how could the ergonomics of it be improved. So you take the example of like a pair of scissors, quite an everyday. They'll always give you a product that's an everyday one that you've used before. They also like things like a microwave or a TV controller, that type of thing. So what you might want to do is like change some of the materials to make it a little bit more grippy, make it a little bit less aggressive on the hands. You might want to actually change the shape of certain parts. You might want to make things lighter. You might want to make sure you're considering anthropometric data. So if you take things like kettle, again, do the same sort of thing. Is what they might do is make it so it's easy to hold up. You press a button so something lights up to let someone know it's turned on. It clicks again to let you know that it's turned on. The handle will be nice and grippy, so it's not as harsh. It might have better weight distribution. So last thing is, can you answer the questions? And then if you've got any other questions, please let me know.